It is 6 o'clock on Tuesday, June 9th, and I'm going to call this Lacey City Council work session to order. Council members CU and Cox are attending remotely, but all other council is here present. Also, I want to acknowledge that we, the City of Lacey, are on the ancestral lands of the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek, including the Nisqually Indian Tribe and the Squaxin Indian Tribe. Can I get a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
Move to approve the agenda as published.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? And that motion unanimously carries. We have approved our evening's agenda. Next up, we have public comment. Is there anyone wishing to address the council this evening? Seeing none, then our next agenda item is goes to Dave, our housekeeping ordinance briefing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members. Today, we're approaching council with kind of a different work session topic, where we've identified 3 separate items that are related to the text of the Lacey Municipal Code that are going to require, in staff's view, some sort of slight amendments. In our view, they're sort of housekeeping amendments. And so we figured we'd get them in front of council at a work session so that you could kind of get eyes on them rather than approaching you directly at the council asking for action. So this is simply a briefing. If there's any questions, of course, I'm going to be happy to answer them. And if any particular topic you feel requires more in-depth conversation, we can always come back to a future work session. But the idea here is that I'd briefly present them tonight, and then you will see them at a future council meeting where the staff will be asking for action on a particular ordinance relating to each of these, and they'll all come forward separately. This is the only time you'll see them together. So the first one is related to LMC 3.02, specifically the business and occupation tax. There's in reviewing this section of the code, staff has recognized that there could be some clarity added to provide clarity to the service and other business activity. Now, the business and occupation tax ordinance that council has adopted is based upon a model ordinance. And there's a section in the model ordinance that we feel could provide that clarity to our code. So we are going to ask council in the future to adopt that. And specifically, it's enumerated here in your staff report. It's a new subsection 4. It's verbatim language from the model ordinance. There's not going to be any effect to the tax that's going to be imposed on Lacey citizens. It just, again, it provides clarity as for somebody reading the code as to, hey, what the particular tax is going to be as it applies to me.
I mean,
So
I read that new red line, number 4, and to me it looks like a lot of legal jumbo. Can you break down to what we're trying to specifically address in this? Because
So-
I was having a hard time following it. It has to do with software and
it could. In a nutshell, if you look at subsections 1, 2, and 3, there's going to be taxes applied for sales at retail.
Yeah.
And then you have specifically for engaging in the business, printing, et cetera. And then you have retail services.
Yeah.
And so elsewhere in the code, you can find language where particular businesses are going to be categorized either under sales at retail or retail services. But this is kind of, I would just categorize it as a catch-all. So if you're upon every other person engaging in business, and then there's some clarity here for including, among other things, without limiting the scope, which is the language that you're talking to. And then at the very end, comma, and persons engaged in the business of rendering any type of service which does not constitute a sale at retail, a sale at wholesale, or a retail service. So it's simply just a catch-all. And the language that's included in there is all just verbatim from the model ordinance. So I don't know if there's any particular clause in here that you wanted some.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out what we're trying to, like, where did you feel like we were
We are trying to remove any argument that a particular business is not a retail service or a sale at retail. That's basically what we're trying to do.
Okay, like, for example, like if you're renting, to someone else, you're not paying B&O tax on rent.
I'd have to get back to you on
Okay,
that, but
well, that would be, I don't think
Yeah.
that's the case.
we're
but
not
the-
attempting to expand the number of
Yeah.
businesses that are going to be subject to business and occupation tax, if that's the concern. We're clarifying the businesses that might wonder whether they are technically a retail service or a sale at retail. We're just,
Engaging in the business of rendering any type of service, a sale at retail, a sale at wholesale.
and again, this will come, we're not asking for action tonight, so I'll take a note that council might want a little bit more clarity on,
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, we're putting in here to, make sure that we're capturing something specifically. I'm not quite sure what we're missing here on what's not covered on, on the above it. And so it does feel like we're kind of just repeating what we're already sort of doing. But that's why I'm trying to figure out, like, what are we trying, like, where's the issue that we're trying to solve on this?
the issue that we're trying to solve, and I agree with you, I do believe that the language that we already have in the code does capture the tax on all the businesses that are operating within the city.
Yeah.
However, what we're attempting to clarify is that any person that would make an argument that they do not fit under a sale at retail or a sale of retail service, if they were to make that argument, we would be like, okay, well, under subsection 4, everybody else, whether you're specifically a sale at retail or retail service, is still going to be required to pay the tax. And
So
then
has
there's going to be,
has anybody made that argument? Have we lost any money because
No.
of the?
no, but it's been raised. It has been raised.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, okay. I see what we're trying to do. We're trying to make certain that everyone under, the above is covered. It feels like it's more, seems to me it's more confusing than what we have now, but I'll let you continue.
And again, we're not asking council to take any action. This is just a first blush. We'll bring this item forward. I think it could be as soon as next week if council, has no objection to it coming forward again, with the own focused staff report specifically on this item. And,
No, I get it, and you answered my questions, I get it,
okay.
yeah.
I guess that last, any persons engaged in the business of rendering any type of service does not constitute a sale at retail, a sale at wholesale, or a sale at retail service. But
That-
in my case, in the case of you renting to someone, it feels like now that person who's collecting rent is now owed B&O tax according to this, because it,
Well, anybody, and again, I don't have the whole code in front of me, and I'm not going to ask Troy right now, but generally speaking,
I mean, like.
generally speaking, there's also, we got to remember that there's exemptions to business and occupation tax
Sure.
contained elsewhere in the code that are, where there's a listing of all the businesses that are specifically not going to owe that tax. But I'll make sure we get back to you on the issue of rental.
I guess the other clarification I have when it comes to B&O tax is, we exempt the first 20,000 of B&O tax, first 20, which I think is too small of a number to tell you the truth. I think processing someone who makes $21,000 in the city of Lacey is, for the time it takes to process that payment, it's probably costing us more in staff time to do that. That's a quick discussion we maybe have later. But say you do make under 20,000, at what point, are you exempt, like, all the way up until you make 20,000? So like in the first quarter, you make, 18,000, you don't pay it, and then, like, I'm trying to figure out how that exemption comes into play.
Sure. So once a business exceeds 20,000, the entire 20,000 becomes taxable. So it's not a deduction or up to, it's the entire amount, therefore
Okay.
becomes taxable.
But, so, yeah. Okay. Well, I think we should have a conversation about that too, at some point.
And there's other mandatory amendments that are required to be implemented by January 1st of 2027. Specifically to the definition, I believe it's to retail sales. And so this is going to be coming up again, again this year, this section of the code.
Okay.
Does this have kind of, I remember it was last year, the year before that, the state included more taxes on like presentations and software and marketing and so is it kind of like making sure that those type of things are also, there's no argument that those are also covered?
I wouldn't speak to those specifically, but certainly could be. I'd want to look into that. But yeah, there was an argument raised to the city, hey, does my business qualify? I don't, and we feel it can be clearer. And I appreciate the mayor's comments that this does, it's a lot more legalese, it's a lot more language. But we
Yeah.
want to be careful when we have a model ordinance. We don't want to tweak the state model ordinance. We want to utilize what it is. And this is an optional section that we didn't choose to include originally. But we are feeling it's appropriate to include now.
Yeah, to me, it feels more confusing than before, so I don't, that's just myself, it's something to think about.
Okay. The second item, switching gears now, is something that I'm going to have a strong recommendation that council does take action on at a future council meeting. And this is just to square up the LMC with the state law, and this is related to latecomer agreements. Now, for council members, just awareness, in case you're not aware, a latecomer agreement is where a developer puts in some infrastructure for the city on their own dime, but it benefits other areas, other future developers. And so a latecomer agreement allows them to recover fair share costs of their development from those future developers that connect into the system. The state law for utilities, it's a requirement that the city offer a latecomer agreement. And state law indicates that reimbursement period should be 20 years. Well, the LMC is 15 years. It was never updated when the state law was updated. So we are simply going to be bringing forward an ordinance that would have an amendment of the word 15 to 20, giving in Lacey what is required by state law, the reimbursement period to be clarified to 20 years.
Do we have any latecomer agreements out there right now?
Yeah. And we're not in violation of anything. It's just that, because we haven't reached a 15-year period
Yeah.
where we wouldn't be collecting. But yes, no, we do have latecomer agreements that are active.
Great.
Would the change from 15 to 20 affect latecomer agreements that are already in place or just future?
Not if they're written and signed with a 15-year period.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But when did this
we
law?
have latecomer agreements that are in practice recent that have 20-year language in them.
Okay,
Oh, they do?
Yes.
Have the 20-year
because
language. Okay.
under
Because we're
state law.
required to do that. Yeah.
Right, but I didn't know, I thought, as long as we did that anyway, even though
Yeah.
our ordinance says 15.
Yeah,
so-
but there's also, I'd have to check, but I'm sure there's some that are getting near expiration. I mean, we had that moratorium for a while that kind of stalled everything. But I'm sure there's some that still have 15-year language that were 15 years at the time under state law as well.
Okay, so we're good.
Yeah, it wasn't retroactive. State law wasn't retroactive, yeah. Okay.
All right? And then the final matter is related to the massage and reflexology business ordinance that council passed about 2 years ago now. And again, here in practice, it's been in place for a couple of years. There's some language in it. And there's actually a couple of different items. One of them is related to, the role of the finance department and the community and economic development department. It's pretty clear what the finance department is to do. I mean, applications for a business are going to be received by the finance department. The finance department is going to be dispersing those to the community and economic development department and to the police department for review to make sure that the business application is appropriate and whether there's any issues that would cause denial of the business. If there's a denial, there's a right to an appeal. And historically, community and economic development has always administered appeals. And so so there's just some confusion we want to get clarity in the code as to how exactly that's going to work. Subsequent to the adoption of this ordinance, council will also remember that you did an overhaul of the hearing examiner ordinance. And just last year, we updated or created a new Title 11, which encapsulates all the hearing examiner rules. So it would be nice to just reference the hearing examiner process from this section of code to what we actually have now in Chapter 11, and clarify that the role of community and economic development is just to facilitate the process to get it in front of the hearing examiner, not necessarily to have community and economic development staff at the hearing, presenting the matter. We want to clarify that. Yeah, and that's it. And these we're still working as a staff level, we're still working on the specific edits. They're not major. Again, this is just a little bit of cleanup stuff. And it's not ready to come before council probably within the next month or so, but I would expect it probably sometime this summer. This would be something else that council would be seeing.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Any other questions? Okay.
All righty.
Yeah,
thank you.
when it comes back to us on that the other red line, I'm not sure if we can, what we can do there. Because the other thing, the other sentence in there that seems a little confusing to me is where it says in parentheses, the subsection includes, among others, and without limiting the scope hereof, whether or not title to material used in the performance of such businesses passes to another by accession, merger, or other than by outright sale.
So again, this is model language.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard your comments.
Okay.
And we'll certainly come forward to council when we bring an ordinance. I'll be better prepared, and certainly finance staff will be
Okay.
with me, better prepared to address those specific questions.
Yeah, I would just like a, example of what they're specifically trying to talk about
Yep.
there, with.
Yep.
Okay,
Noted.
thank you.
All right.
Our next agenda item is the Regional Athletic Complex Improvements Project briefing.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thanks for the opportunity to give you an update. Got Jen Burbidge, Director of Parks, Culture, and Recreation.
And I'm Brett Bogard, Capital Projects Engineer with Public Works.
So wanted to provide an update as we continue on through the 60% and 90% design phases tonight. The focus of this work session is to update the council on the progress in order to stay on track to move to 100% design by the end of this year, and in turn stay on time for the PFD funding opportunity. And then staff can continue to move further into development of construction plans. So this will look familiar to you. We've had this slide with our red line there moving across the screen. Happy to say that we're still on track. But the red vertical line does show where we are. So we're just completing the 60% design process. And like I said, with plans to move to 100% by the end of this year. And so currently this month, we're advancing from the 60% design stage to the 90% design stage. And we have our 60% design estimates. These numbers will look familiar to you as well. So these are the numbers that we won't exceed for both the base bid and the base bid alternatives. As you know, council directed staff to focus the efforts for this project on improving the existing rack developments on the east side of Marvin Road. And we're gonna walk through these numbers a little bit more, but just wanted to give you that overview. And these numbers do include the design cost, taxes, escalation, and everything. These are final project costs. So let's look at the base bid improvements. This will also look familiar. The main focus is converting the natural grass soccer field 2 to synthetic turf and adding lights with the purpose of extending the field use hours to our community groups. Base bid improvements will also include additional seating for increased spectator capacity to the west of soccer field 1. You can see those there in yellow. And we've got various fencing upgrades, including around soccer field 2. That's the one that's getting converted to turf. And then what we don't have here shown is the baseball complex, but this project does include finishing that outfield netting on baseball fields 1 and 2. We've been trying to get to this project for several years, so this is a great opportunity to wrap it in with this project and get full protection with the outfield netting all the way around fields 1 and 2. This slide reflects the ad alts. So we have 3 ad alternates, and these are going to be considered and may be awarded depending on the pricing. These will include Wi-Fi upgrades and expansion, hardscape improvements, and additional fencing upgrades should adequate funding be available, which at this point looks promising. But of course, we have to wait till we see how everything comes in. But that first one is backstops for fields 1, 2, and 6 to match existing backstops found on site. And then the Wi-Fi upgrades, again, this is something that's been a long time needed out there at the RAC in both the baseball and the soccer sides of the operation to support broadcasting, streaming, and internet-based connectivity. It's going to help tournament directors and also just park users in general as well. And then we've got the concrete paving replacement, and this is replacing the existing porous concrete in the baseball complex with asphalt paving. Oh, go ahead. Yes, it's in really bad shape. It's expensive to maintain. It looks bad, and it's reached the end of its life. And so this will actually be a cost savings for our maintenance. It's 45,000 square feet. And yeah, it's going to reduce maintenance costs while also enhancing circulation, safety, resilience, and accessibility. So this will look familiar as well. As council recalls, the direction was to staff to pursue the 15-year debt scenario that's outlined in red. Nothing's changed there. So we're still moving forward with that, of course. And really, that's all we had for you, but happy to answer any additional questions. And if we need more detail, we have Brett here too.
Yeah. Do we have a breakdown of, you know, the costs of the, what is it? We're borrowing up to where we're trying to keep it within 10,000, 10 million, 9,
Yeah,
right?
10.9 million is
10.9.
the upper.
Like, do we have a breakdown of what we think the bids are going to be to get to that number, right? Like, how much is it costing to convert the field, and like where's the big expense coming from? You know, it's like we were all excited when we were going to do this because we thought we were going to build, you know, do the next phase of the rack, and now it's come down to, well, we can't do the next phase of the rack. We're going to maybe, you know, get close to having, you know, professional soccer here, but they need specific things like, you know, locker rooms and everything else. And so we're hoping, well, maybe we'll get there, but it doesn't feel like our 10 million or almost $11 million is going very far. And so is it mostly being taken up in that turf conversion, or like where's the major expense?
Yeah, so definitely just going to give overview here. Can't off the top of my head get into very specific numbers, but a lot of it is in the turf conversion. That's a multi-million-dollar expense just in and of itself, as well as the seating upgrades that Jen mentioned. That's over $1 million as well. And again, just before I go any further, to give more context, these are full project numbers. So that's including the design, all the taxes, and construction. And so it definitely can be a little bit surprising when you look at some other construction costs and you think, oh, well, it only costs $1 million to do it for developer A. Why does it cost us 1.5? Well, that might not include the design that they put in and all that stuff. And Rick, we,
So when you talk about this full project cost, start to finish, so if your bids come in, your bids may come in a lot lower than that number, but it's because we're taking into account all the work to get to the bid stage as well.
The other infrastructure is the light poles that we're adding with the lighting, another big item.
Go ahead, Councilmember.
Yeah, has anything at all changed since the 60% design? And can you just talk about the process, because it seems like it's taking a long time? I'd just like to understand it a little better.
yeah, so practically speaking, we're refining the design as we go. And so yes, stuff changed. Not any big items, hence why the slides haven't really changed all that much. We're keeping our course that we've been directed to keep, and getting into the weeds more. And I don't want to bore you all with the specification details because nobody wants that. But working on stuff like contract language, specifying exact materials and stuff like that is what takes time. So we want to make sure we're all agreeing as staff, like, okay, this is the light pole, for example, that we want. This model number needs to be this tall, all those details that do take time to work out. And it can be a little bit daunting, I guess, when you look at the project and it's like, well, those slides haven't changed since you were back here in November. But there definitely is more going on in the nitty-gritty that is going on.
It's everything underneath, irrigation, drainage, stormwater, types of materials. I think Brett mentioned that. So with each design phase, you just get more and more of the engineering part done.
Okay.
Above ground and underground. And
All right.
refine those details.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cox?
Just one question on the resurfacing of the parking lot. Has there been any consideration given to a surface that is pervious rather than just hard asphalt where water runs off of it?
Yeah, so just to clarify, it's not the parking lot, it's the plaza in the baseball complex that currently is a pervious surface. But as Jen kind of mentioned, that can be rather expensive to maintain. It's in the, at least tens of thousands of dollars a year to get it cleaned, because it has a tendency to grow moss in it. Well, then the moss breaks it down, and then in order to clean it, you have to pressure wash it, which breaks it down further. And so it's just sort of this cycle that we've been doing for almost 20 years now, and that's roughly the lifespan that was expected anyways. So that's the thought in moving to the asphalt, like Jen had mentioned, is easier to maintain long-term, should last us a while longer too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any plans to offer any kind of shuttle service in the parking lot for people who might have mobility issues?
Not right now. I'm not sure how we would pay for that type of a service. Just kind of with our funding challenges as they are.
Okay. Well, keep trudging along. Thank you.
That's very exciting. Thank you.
Next up, we have the Light Curve franchise agreement application.
Should I start over?
No,
I didn't
go
realize
ahead.
she turned it off. Anyway, the two attachments are the Light Curve franchise application and the draft franchise agreement. So the plan is,
You have the ability to.
oh, look at that, okay. So the plan tonight is to review the information, no action is needed. Then we will forward this on to the July 7th council meeting for approval through a resolution. Since it's been about 3 years since we've had a completed franchise agreement application, I thought I would go over just general information, and then we'll go over the actual application. So there's a federal law called the Telecommunications Act of 1996, and to simplify the information that's in the green box there, the law was designed to encourage competition among communications providers, telecommunications providers, so that consumers would have more choices, better service, lower prices, while also supporting the expansion of new telecommunications technologies. And as you can see, basically the cities were required to pass telecommunication ordinances that comply with this federal law. And as you can see from the information in the blue box there from the Municipal Research and Services Center, local governments cannot have regulations that prohibit or have the effect of prohibiting the provisions of telecommunications services. And we have in our Lacey Municipal Code, Chapter 5.60, it focuses on telecommunications. And as you can see, the purpose of this chapter aligns with the Telecommunications Act of 1996. I won't go over all these points, obviously there's quite a few, but briefly, the purpose of this chapter is to permit and manage reasonable, fair, and equitable access to the city's public right-of-ways for the telecommunication purposes on a competitively neutral basis. So anytime that we receive a telecommunications franchise application, we need to keep this in mind when reviewing it through that lens. Because as part of our telecommunications chapter, we do highlight different types of licenses: franchise, master permits, and cable franchise. So what's being applied for in this case is a citywide franchise, meaning that it's for the entire city and not for just a particular section of the city. This section of the chapter describes the criteria the city must use to determine whether to approve or deny a telecommunications franchise agreement. It's a lot of words. As shown in the blue box, the city must make a recommendation to the city council within 120 days of receiving a completed franchise agreement application. As you can see, there are a lot of things in this determination that I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of detail tonight, but I just wanted to highlight again that there are certain standards for whether we're going to approve it or not. And one is the restoration of rights of way or other properties. If there happens to be damage to the property, how's that taken care of? Emergency work, notice of work, and of course, all the permits are required. So in addition, the city has a hierarchy of locations in which these facilities must be constructed, installed, and located. It's like what we prefer, and if not, then here are some other options. So before us tonight for review, on March 27th, the city received a completed telecommunications franchise agreement application, which was attachment 1 in your packet from Light Curve. They will deploy fiber and electronics to support commercial and residential high-speed internet services, and they have paid the required $3,000 application fee. In their application, they have indicated they are still in the planning phases, and they have noted on here, although it is a citywide franchise application, these are the identified target areas that are noted in blue on the map. And if they are approved for the right-of-way, the franchise agreement, they will provide more details for the required right-of-way and construction permits. And they also must meet, did somebody have a question?
Oh, go ahead.
No, okay.
Yeah, I guess, so did they put in the application to start, or are we telling them we want you to focus in these areas first?
They chose those areas.
They chose the
Yep,
areas first?
yep.
Okay,
This is what the map that they provided in their application.
Okay,
Okay, and then also Light Curve must meet the LMC 5.60 in addition to other referenced Lacey requirements we talked about earlier, the hierarchy of locations, and They must meet the development guidelines and public works standards of the city.
That's what confused me, because we say a hierarchy of locations, and then I wasn't sure if this was our hierarchy of locations, or if this was
Yeah, just to clarify really quickly, I think it's a really good point of, they're not talking about like a specific geographical region, they're talking about how you deploy it in the right-of-way.
Okay.
It being a hierarchy of, hey, if things are underground, then there's the requirement to underground new infrastructure.
Got it. Locations as where you're going to put,
I had the same question, Mayor.
Okay, yeah.
I was asking Shannon today, I don't understand this hierarchy, because this
Yeah.
is my first time I've had to go through one of these applications. It's not
Sure.
really my,
yeah, and so
second
like,
nature.
we prefer it to be underground, but if not, then so on, so got it.
Right. Okay, so I did a little research on Light Curve, and as you can see by this slide here, that Light Curve is formerly Rainier Connect, and they do offer services, fiber networks in several cities in Washington currently. And they do have a pole attachment with PSE, meaning that they wouldn't be installing infrastructure on the city poles. Okay, so once we received the complete application, we had a review of it with the Communications Department, the Public Works Department, and the Community Economic Development Department. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have 120 days to make a determination, which is July 25th. And again, we talked about this a little bit earlier too, the criteria to determine whether to grant or deny is the legal ability to provide services. It's not all of them, but they did provide their business registration, their Washington UTC registration, and they do have a City of Lacey business license. And then the capacity to accommodate alternatives, which is what we talked about, the hierarchy of physical locations. And again, what I mentioned earlier, to mitigate and/or repair any damages. And are they able to serve the community's interests? And so they provide additional data services options in Lacey, which is great. And they must follow the applicable federal, state, and local laws. And as I mentioned earlier, the reasonable, fair, and equitable access to the public rights of way of the city for telecommunication purposes on a competitively neutral basis. This language is found in their draft communication agreement, which is attachment 2. And it is consistent with past telecommunication franchise agreements. And we just did one, I think, 3 years ago with Ziply, so that's that. So a few other requirements: they must apply for and receive all applicable rights-of-way and development permits, which I mentioned earlier. They must carry a minimum of $2 million in liability insurance during the term of the franchise, and they must acquire a performance bond prior to any construction in the right-of-ways. And they also, as I mentioned earlier, they must pay all the fees that are applicable to persons doing business within the city of Lacey. However, as you see in the first bullet point, there is pursuant to the Internet Tax Freedom Act, the internet services may not be taxed. And state law prohibits imposing franchise fees for any telephone business or service provider except for administrative expenses related to receiving and approving permits, license, franchises, et cetera. And the term of this application, or the franchise, would be 5 years, which is consistent with our previous franchise agreements. Okay.
Basically 3,000 every 5 years is what we're getting out of this,
Oopsie. I just went one part
something like
too
that.
far.
There's a separate cost for renewals, and I believe it's less than 3,000.
Okay.
And so again, tonight, this is for review, and then we plan to bring this forward to the July 7th regular council meeting for action through a resolution. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them, or try to answer them.
Questions? Ryan? Councilmember? Yeah.
So if this is only set for 5 years, what happens at the end of 5 years if we don't extend their agreement? Do they come back and rip up the fiber that has been already installed?
So it's
great question.
a good question, and certainly a theoretical one that we have not ever had to navigate as part of the city, but the city would need to have a reason for not extending the franchise agreement, and it would have to be one of the reasons as outlined in the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which you can see is pretty prescriptive, and so we'd have to find what that was. If it was a case where, you know, a provider did meet that threshold, there is language in the LMC about how we would go about removing infrastructure in the right-of-way after that point.
Okay. Any other questions? More competition, the better, in my opinion. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Oh,
any
Ryan, you
number
got
of-
something else, Ryan? You got something else? Oh, go ahead. Ask away.
With the map that they provided for the, where they want to start deploying their fiber, how does that overlap or with the Ziply one from, I think you said 3 years ago?
Yeah, about 3 years ago.
That's a good question. Do you know? I don't really know.
Yeah, I think, you know, something to consider with the maps, and we can certainly pull up the Ziply map, but I think there is some overlap. There's definitely some other areas, but they are asking for a citywide franchise. So what they're indicating with this is where they would theoretically start. It doesn't mean that is where they would have to start, because the council, if it was to proceed, would be granting a franchise to operate in the entire city. And then, you know, this firm, as well as past firms, have to provide right-of-way permits and any other construction permits that would be necessary to do the work in the right-of-way. And so that's where you would actually see where they intended to provide those services.
And just a side note too, that I do live in one of the neighborhoods that this is showing, and I know Ziply was not in that. So I know that's not an overlap, but I'm not sure about the Northeast Lacey location.
That is a curious question of our current providers. Where are they at on our current City of Lacey map? That's, you know, I think just an FYI would be interesting to, just to know, you know, separate from this, but that is a good question to know.
That's a good question. Maybe I can look into providing some kind of a map that we can say.
Yeah,
And
this
like
is-
she said, that this is where they propose to start, so who knows?
Sure.
Assuming that would be
You-
fairly accurate.
Any other questions?
Yeah, earlier, Parks was saying that there's going to be Wi-Fi at the rack. Is there any overlap with this and that? Like, have we chosen a provider for out at the rack, or are these guys a potential, or we just go with Comcast, or, I don't, it seems like if these guys are going to be doing work, well, I guess,
Well,
yeah, it's right there, right? So I'm just wondering if, well,
Yeah.
because it's.
Yeah, there is service with Wi-Fi to the rack, and Jim can add on to this, but really it's the infrastructure we own within the rack to broadcast routers and boosters within the rack to boost the signal. And it's more of internal infrastructure than it is a service provider being able to serve the rack.
Okay, so the lines are already there, we just need to extend them further?
Well, in
Boost
terms of
them and-
Wi-Fi, you know, we have Wi-Fi coverage, but we need to boost the system with.
There is Wi-Fi.
There is Wi-Fi at the rack.
It's just not very good.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
You get a bunch of people on at the same time. and-
Yeah, so boosting the on-site infrastructure.
I know there, but I
Tournament directors and stuff, you know.
and they want to broadcast the game and.
Okay, well, any other questions? Okay, thank
Great.
you.
I'll see what I can do about getting that map.
Yeah, that'd be great, just for FYI.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councilmember. Okay, and then our next item is council reports. Does anyone have a burning council report? Go ahead.
Just real brief, I was able to fill in for Councilmember Greenstein at the opioid abatement meeting, which was really the finalizing the recommendations for funding, which we're able to do, and then I believe that goes to the county commissioners next for funding, so I'm sure we'll get more information above that. They had about 7 different recipients for that, so.
I have one report.
Go ahead.
All right. JASCOM met yesterday. We had kind of a meeting/retreat, planning session, 5-year horizon planning session, and I'll go over the meeting information first. April and May shelter stats are slightly up. Thurston County's at 52%, Olympia 24%, Lacey 18%, Tumwater 7%. Positive outcomes, adoptions are at 64% of 2025 level. Transfers are at 75% of 2025 level, and return to owners are at 110% of 2025 level. Field calls are at 95% of 2025 levels, and by jurisdiction, that means that County is 43% of field calls, Olympia is 24, Lacey's 23, and Tumwater is 10. Lacey had the largest increase in field calls at 11%. The retreat was us talking about, the previous 5-year plan that went from 2022 to 2026, and just kind of going over and reviewing, what happened in those 5 years. Total intake was up by 62%. Field service call up 86%. Cruelty investigations are up 107%, which means there was really no cruelty cases prior to 5 years ago. But the one came on the radar, and we went out on it. It was pretty bad out there, and it was just, and so as a consequence of that, 5 more people self-identified as, hey, I have too many of this or too many of that, and this is out of control at my house. So just by taking that one case, it opened up 5 more. So surgical procedures are up 612%.
Wow.
And partly because there was very few surgical procedures prior to 2022 that were done in-house, and now the majority of them are done in-house. So as a context for numbers, in 2021, there was 256 surgeries done at Joint Animal Services. In 2025, there was 1,820.
Would that include like spay and neuter services?
Yeah, those
Okay.
those are surgical procedures. In terms of numbers for the cruelty investigation, prior to 2022, in the 5-year plan, there was 358 cases, and most recently, there's 742.
Councilmember,
I was going to ask you, are there some trends? What kind of surgeries? Why are they up?
Spay neuter.
Even though that, I see.
Yeah, sometimes they are a little more than spay neuter, but typically that's what they are. And there's just no low-cost spay neuter clinics in Thurston County, period. So to get to a low-cost clinic, you have to go to Tacoma. Hopefully that's going to change sometime in the next 6 months. Not really supposed to talk about it yet.
No, that makes sense to me. I just was curious to make sure there weren't some like injuries or something else that.
No,
some
nobody's out
nutrients
there
elsewhere.
actively
Okay, that's fine.
BB gunning,
Okay.
small animals. In terms of operational efficiency, length of stay is down from 14 days to 9 days. For dogs, from 32.9 days to 12 days for cats. And part of that is because Sarah's come up with this expanded foster network. So what'll happen is, as they come in, they're cycling through a whole lot faster and getting back out a whole lot faster, spending a whole lot less time at Joint Animal Services compound, is what we're gonna call that for now, until we get a little later in the presentation. Transfer partnerships are up, and the adoption program is working really well. So all those things contribute to fewer days of any animal being in a cage at JASCOM. So they're getting out a lot faster than they ever have before. Let's see. I'll go back to some of the regular meeting information that I didn't get until my later notes after reviewing. Mason County Field Services contract. Mason County is unable to move forward with services due to its significant financial and operational impacts associated with the Office of Public Defense. So we're all getting hit by that. So their anticipated cost and increase is putting a strain on their financial capacity, and they have to back out for now until they figure out how they're going to pay for a lot more public defenders because of what the state handed down to us. And so they're kind of in the same situation, like how do we get this covered? Yeah. Joint Animal Services contract with Best Friends. I don't know if you guys remember the group called Best Friends is going to put 1 FTE in Joint Animal Service for 6 months to increase the efficiency even more than what's happened over these last 5 years. So the goal is to get over 90%. I think we're at 88 in somewhere in that ballpark, 88% efficiency. It's very rare that, we're, in terms of that efficiency.
That's like a nonprofit coming in to help
Correct.
move things along? Okay.
Yeah, that's a nonprofit who said, you know what, we want to help you guys. I think there's other places that are in a little bit more need of help, but Sarah is on the board, the national board, so I think she kind of petitioned and got us a spot.
Good.
Let's see. As we got a little deeper into the retreat, we did a building tour, so, you know, if you guys haven't done it, it's an interesting place. It's kind of got some patchwork, and, but the commission, you know, kind of agreed that our priority over the next 5 years should be our capital outlay. So since our building inventory that was taken, I think that was 3-4 years ago, the worst building in Lacey's inventory was the police building, right? And so, and the second worst was JazzCom. So JazzCom has moved up to number 1. So the capital outlay is going to be probably the biggest push and driver over the next 5 years. The state has given $1 million for design. However, that $1 million can't be released until a property is selected and purchased. So there's some caveat to that money. So, you know, we just start kind of focusing on and strategizing on a capital campaign. What's that going to look like? How we're going to get the word out? I honestly think it should start at 3 cities and get everybody on board. And further than that, I think it should start with the city managers and the county manager to, you know, start having the conversation of, sorry, Rick, to put more work on you, but have the conversation of, you know, how do we all come together to, you know, fix our problem. I did hand out, I've given out to some of the other jurisdictions, you know, the report that we got on all the buildings, the inventory report, so that they could see that, hey, JazzCom is the next building in terms of Lacey's inventory that's in great need. You know, we'll see how they respond and feel about that.
Unfortunately, it feels like some of the other jurisdictions, it just feels like they think this is a Lacey issue.
Yep.
And not a JazzCom issue. I mean, yes, Lacey is the one that, for the benefit of the group, is helping to run the organization with a Lacey employee, but this is not a Lacey's animal services. This is a regional animal services, but it feels like we're the ones that are stuck having to try to figure this out, which, you know, is a little frustrating.
I think it could be numerous reasons, but I really think it's more of a degree of separation. We understand the building, the folks that work in the building understand the building as well as a JazzCom that meets in the building. So we're maintaining it and all these different things, so we have that direct connection. So it's a one-off for others, so it's hard to
Yeah, they're not
keep context.
in the building all the time having to deal with it.
So I do believe it's important that, well, one, you know, at the managers, that we coordinate and talk about it, but I also think it's important for the other jurisdictional councils to talk about it, and the respective representatives go back and have those conversations, and there could be ways that we can encourage them to actually either hold meetings or tours of the building too, as well, just to get a sense of what it's like, the building condition it's in, and again, it gets back to what's the region look like in terms of animal services in the future? Because if we don't have a building, then what do we do with the service? And so that's an existing need versus a want.
And each of those councils has been invited to come and tour the facility, take a look at a facility. I know that Olympia did come as a council to the facility, took a look at it. I don't know about Tumwater in the county. I know that Commissioner Klaus is pretty passionate about it and has shared with her council that, you know, hey, because when you walk through the building, I mean, obviously it's really old, it needs a lot of help, and there's a lot of deferred maintenance. Lacey, the Lacey maintenance is out there probably on a weekly basis. In fact, they were there while we were having our retreat there, fixing something. And so it's probably.
That might be helpful, because I know when we did the police station tours, you know, with some of the residents, their eyes opened pretty wide. They were like, wow, we really need a new police station. This place is a dump.
Yeah.
And it was pretty obvious that it needed to work.
And that was the consensus view yesterday, was, first and foremost, let's start this capital conversation going with the other jurisdictions, starting maybe at the 3 cities or with the managers first. And
We have been chatting it on, periphery, but it's getting time where we need to, seriously move a strategy forward.
Yeah. And so everything that can be done is being done. You know, JASCOM is busting at the seams. The amount of programs that JASCOM has, even with their limitations in terms of space, and the efficiencies that they've brought, that Sarah's brought, more of everything, you know, cycling through a whole lot faster. There's the amount of programs is greater than we've ever had before. The positive outcomes are greater than we've ever had in any time in its history. And now the building is kind of busting at the seams. So one of the things that I brought up was, you know, in addition to, you know, because it's like, okay, well, yeah, we know these programs are bringing in all this extra traffic, but the fact of the matter is that Thurston County is no longer 250,000 people. You know, it's well over 300 now. And so as it grows, the need for more space is going to just be even worse. That is it. That's my report.
Okay, thank you for that. It is.
One thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of our police department, so I was really happy to be here to see 3 new officers sworn in. I was really happy to be here to support that. And then also I had a tour of Lot, so I learned a lot about wastewater. I was just surprised at
Yeah.
how much there is to know about wastewater. I met with TRPC last week, but I'll have a report next week.
Great. Well, it is 6:56. We're going to be adjourning to a executive session to discuss the performance of a public employee. It is 6:56 now. We will enter into that executive session at 7:10, I guess. Sure. 7:10, that gives us, is that too long? No, just 14 minutes. Yeah, that's fine. So we'll enter it at 7:10. We'll be in there for a half hour, and if needed, we'll come back and extend it at that point. But until then, we're going to adjourn into an executive session. So I'm back from an executive session, but we're going to be extending our executive session for 20 minutes. So we'll reconvene at 8 p.m. So I'm back from the executive session. The council is actually going to extend the executive session for another period of 15 minutes. And so it'll be extended till 8:15. Thank you. It is 8:15. Well, I just came out of executive session, but we are actually going to extend it, and this will be our last 15-minute extension to 8:30. We're going to extend the city, this executive session period for another 15 minutes, and we'll come out at 8:30. It is 8:30, and we are just got out of our executive session. No decisions were made in the executive session, so we have reached the end of our agenda. So without objection, I'm going to call this meeting adjourned. And as always, keep it classy, Lacey.